Welcome to Paperweights, the podcast where two self-proclaimed gym rats and shooting enthusiasts delve into the world of literature with a sprinkle of humor. Although their biceps could crush a walnut, don't let that intimidate you. They also have a nerdy side. Mike and Brandon have a voracious appetite for reading, particularly in the fantasy genre, and they want to share their passion with you. So grab your protein shake and your favorite novel and join us for a humorous and insightful journey into the world of books with Paperweights.
Welcome back to another episode of the Paperweights. I'm your host, Brandon.
And Justin.
And today, Justin, we are beginning our read of the Stormlight Archives with The Way of Kings.
Way of Kings.
I'm super excited.
Me too.
So, like we've mentioned before, both of us have read it before. I've read all 4 of the novels and only one of the novellas. You've read...
I've read the first
3,
but I have vague memories of 2 and 3. And I have pretty good memories of Way of Kings because I've read that one like 2 or 3 times because I have a weird sickness where when a new book comes out in a giant fantasy series, I reread the entire series.
I do that too.
Which is fun, and then it gets really long. That's why I've read like The Great Hunt like 10 times.
The Great Hunt's a great book.
It is a good book. It's top 4 wheel time for me.
Mike is reading that right now very slowly. And Mike was the original co-host on the podcast here. So
Yep.
Yeah, well, look, I got my coffee today in a mug, kick today in the dick. So, we'll see what we can do there. So before we get started, of course, got to give a shout out to our sponsor, Mudcat Whiskers. They sell beard care products, and I did not set my timer. Sorry, mudcatwhiskers.com. They sell beard care products and soy candles with a wood wick that crackles when you burn it. And the scents come, and the candles come in all the scents that he has for the beard care products. So if you don't have a beard or you're, sensitive to all that stuff on your face, you can get a candle and you can smell it, or you can burn it to just remind yourself of your favorite bearded person and their scent that they wear. Awesome. So look, yesterday, obviously I read books outside of the podcast. And so yesterday I read this D&D Dungeon Academy, No Humans Allowed. And it's like the first book in a trilogy. And it's pretty cool. There's like illustrations. It's fully illustrated throughout the book. Like there's an owl bear smashing a shield.
Nice.
A little kobold.
Is he in a suit?
Is the owl bear in a suit?
Yeah.
No, he's let me try to find he's just got an outfit on. If I could find another.
Okay.
Yeah. So it follows along this girl Zelly, who is a human, but she's being raised by 2 minotaurs, hence why she's got these horns on her head, and she also has a fake tail that's tucked into her belt. She is masquerading as a minotaur in this school for monsters, and she's afraid of being found out that she's not really a minotaur. But she kind of stands up for the outcasts. So like the owl bear he's a vegan owl bear. This little kobold is kind of he's kind of a wimp and scared. There's a mimic.
As kobolds are.
This little mimic right here. never turns into anything useful, and so he's always ostracized because he's like, well, he's a book. He turns into like a lantern or something during the thing, so it's like
Okay.
it's practical utility items, but nothing like mimics usually turn themselves into to trap on weird
Okay.
things.
Did you pick that up to read with Jules? Because it seems
I
pretty
I did. I bought it a while back. It says it's eight for ages 8 to 12, but I mean, I read this in two and a half hours, and it's 180 or 200 pages.
okay.
Um,
Yeah, not bad.
but it's a fun read, even for those that aren't 8 to 12, and even for those that don't have kids. If you're into Dungeons and Dragons, it's basically just like an adventure. And
Mm,
it's funny because they do use terms. It's like, um, oh, we're going to walk through this. And so we have cover from the woods, which gives us advantage.
mm.
And I'm like, hey, I know those terms.
Yeah, that's fun.
It's literally what it means. So, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you reading any other?
Well, technically I'm not reading any books, but I have been playing I finished one of the entries in the Trails of games. It's a JRPG series, so it's a lot of reading. Um, and they're very good, and they also have something that kind of pertains to Stormlight, where it's a shared story. It's basically there's 11 games now, and each have different arcs, but they all are the same story. And like main characters from like the first couple of games will like show up and help you out in like the other games. And it's all like interconnected, and it's really cool. So it kind of gives me Stormlight vibes.
That's good. Did you ever play Octopath Traveler?
I've seen it, but I've never played it.
So it's not it. I mean, there are two games in that series, but and I've never played it, but from what I understand is you can play the same thing through you play the same game or the same storyline through multiple different characters' points of views.
Yeah, this is not like a Rashomon thing. It's like basically think of it like a giant book series where like every couple of books you get like new main characters, but the old main characters will like show up and the old bad guys will show up. So you're like just going along on a quest and like the dude from like Randall Thor will show up. You're like, holy shit, it's Randall Thor, and like it's really cool.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's really fun. If you like JRPGs, you should check out the Trails of Games, and you'll have
Okay.
a lot of game to play.
Probably 60 to 80 hours per game.
Some of them, like the first ones are like 40 hours, and then like they balloon. They have some like the best world building I've seen in games, so which is also kind of Stormlight,
Awesome.
because like yeah, like you really know the towns and like the people in the towns after you play, because you go back to them multiple times in multiple different games.
Well, that's fun.
Yeah.
It's not like Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest. It's a
Oh no.
terrible night to have a curse.
Oh, but it is a terrible night to have a curse.
It is. Uh, all right, so we'll jump in with the prologue. We discussed the prelude um, last week with Gary. So we'll jump into the prologue. And the prologue starts. So we've got characters of Seth Son Son Volano. It is his POV chapter.
That is a name.
Yes, it is a name. Gavilar Kholin, who's the king of the Alethi.
Mhm.
And then minor characters, which we'll learn more about, and you see them so often, are just Spren.
Yeah.
And they just seem to be minor, seemingly sentient things.
Yeah, I kind of think of them about like the little spirits in Princess Mononoke, the little like guys that turn their heads and like. So it's actually like little spirits. Like kind of the easiest way to think about them for now.
Yeah, and almost every facet of the earth, or not earth, but of the world, has a spren associated with it. So
Yeah,
like there's rot, we see rot spren, we see flame spren, wind spren, honor spren, um,
yeah,
all kinds of things, which is pretty cool.
yeah. It's an interesting little world building mechanic.
Yeah, it makes, I made a note later on, it really makes the world alive instead of just kind of empty and just focusing on the human characters.
Yeah.
Because
Really gives it an alien feel too. Where like this is not Earth.
yes, and along with this description of plants that they like they'll pop out and then they'll pop back in.
Yeah, and they have like hard shells because they need to survive the high storms, which we can get into later.
Yeah. We are introduced to a couple facets of the magic system. Um, there's kind of a couple different things that are happening on this world, which we learn the name of the planet is Roshar. Um,
We have a cool map of it.
yeah, at the beginning of the book, you got a cool,
Yeah.
cool little map of
Yeah.
Roshar.
You gotta love fantasy maps. It's one of the coolest things about fantasy novels. You get a new map.
How frequently do you go refer to the map when you're reading, or do you not?
It depends. Like if it's a if like it's travel scenes, I'll like flip back to it. This we haven't really traveled that much, but like in Wheel of Time, like it's like, oh, we're in Andor, now we're going to Tyr along this road. I'll like flip back, like, oh, that's cool. It's right, they're like right over here.
Yeah, I
Like if we start getting to other countries and like strategic battles and stuff like that, then I'll probably look at it more.
yeah, I didn't haven't looked at it much from previous reads of the Stormlight Archives, but I did go back and look at it um this week and just be like, okay, well, where are each of our people? Like, where's Kaladin at? Where's Shallan's storyline at?
Yeah,
And so you got two vastly different with them, you have two vastly different
yeah,
places in the world.
yeah. And I looked up where the Pure Lake was after the interlude. I was like, where is that? Oh, it's over there. Okay.
Yeah, it's in that little arch
Yeah,
right at the
kind
top
of
of it.
kind of in the middle of the map almost.
Yeah. So with the magic system, we find out that Stormlight powers a lot of things. So like they'll use the Stormlight in infused bromes
Yeah, gemstones
and
basically.
gemstones to create lights and for inside of buildings. They use the gemstones as payment. Um, done gemstones, which have no Stormlight in them,
Yeah,
are even though they're worth the same, um, monetary wise, people look down on the done ones because they could be, I guess, more easily counterfeited.
yeah, that makes sense. Cause so like the Stormlight will run out on its own, but it's mysteriously recharged in the high storms. So people like put out their money. I guess they have like a special thing where it won't blow away.
Well,
Cause
we saw Gaz do it a little bit
yeah,
with his bucket, but he was sitting out in the high storm to make sure nobody went and took his bucket. It's like,
yeah.
well, okay, if you want to sit out in the high storm, go ahead.
High storms are interesting. We're in Louisiana, so we get hurricanes a lot, but like we don't get them like every couple of weeks. It'll be a fun little adventure.
And um they go one direction.
Yeah, you go from what, east to west.
Like, yeah, it is I think it's, I don't know if, I mean, we haven't been told in this section what it does, but it just kind of
Yeah,
it circles the globe. And so it comes back around and comes back around
yeah,
always from east to west.
yeah. But at not regular intervals, because you have the storm wardens that try to predict the future, which I don't think we get to them yet.
Meteorologists.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool. So yeah, we got Stormlight that powers things. Um, Seth is able to do lashings, and
yeah,
we get all the information about the three different lashings. So we got the basic lashing, which changes orientation of gravity. And Gary was talking about that last week, and I never really, um, I didn't know that Sanderson thought that flying was a boring mechanic. Because when Gary said that last week, I was like, well, it's funny that he says it's a boring mechanic because he uses it all the time. And then he went on to explain how he makes flying to be more interesting.
Yeah.
And
I've heard him say that too. That was on one of his podcasts.
so
He doesn't like it if he doesn't like powers with no limitations or like hardships to it. So you need Stormlight and he needs like I guess, enough Stormlight to fly up and stuff. It's
yeah.
cool.
Then there's the full lashing, which just holds things together. And then the third lashing is a reverse lashing, which attracts things to an object. And I kept meaning to go back and write it down, make the note. I think it's the third lashing that requires them to have a constant touch.
I think so, yeah. Because that's where he carves off the like boulder and then like
Yeah.
and it flies into people. It's a really
So
cool fight. This is just chapters are really fun setup for like. I mean, there's not that much action the rest of the reading, but it's like, oh, we're starting off with a bang.
oh yeah. Like in all the magic system stuff, we do learn that they can also use he can use Stormlight to heal.
Yeah.
And also he mentions, and here's another limitation on the magic system that Brandon has put here, is he points out that Seth could use shard plate if he wanted to, but he tends not to because the use of Stormlight for the lashings interferes with or no, the use of Stormlight in the shard plate interferes with his use for the lashings.
Yeah.
Which makes sense in the
Yeah.
way that he has described these things working.
Now, I wonder if he could like take off the gauntlets and like still use the third lashing with the touch.
Probably.
Yeah, I mean, then you just have to worry about getting your hand sliced off. But so I guess it's an option.
Yeah. But yeah, I really think that I really like the way Sanderson weaves this fight and the mechanics of the world
Yeah.
into this chapter. Because if he just sat there and told, and said, like, if it was a chapter with Shallan reading a book about
The third lashing is a lashing that can attract things. Yeah.
yeah, I would be like, oh my god, can we like move on?
Yeah.
And like that, if that was like the whole purpose of that chapter was to learn about this from her reading about it.
Yeah. It kind of reminded me of I know we haven't done it for the podcast, but the Mistborn when like Kelsier's first explaining the thing to Vin and like they're like actually doing the magic. So like you see somewhat the explanation and the practical use at the same time. It's just a very good way of doing magic like that.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. So but yeah, so Seth is, we learn he plot wise he is something called truthless, whatever the hell that is.
Yeah.
We know that the limitation of being truthless is that you can't take your own life.
Yep.
But he's bound to an oath stone, so whoever controls the oath stone controls him, and he is sent to kill the King Gavilar. And the beginning of the chapter tells us that he's going to kill the king. Like,
Yeah.
we're not wondering what the hell he's going to do. It's like Seth wore white on the night he was to kill the king.
Yeah.
Like, okay, he's going to kill the king.
And he was hired by the Parshendi.
The Parshendi, yeah. Which the Alethi, like, this is the night that the Alethi and the Parshendi signed a treaty, and they were been fighting for who knows how long. And they signed.
I don't think they've been fighting. They've just been in talks for stuff. They fight later. They fight afterwards.
Oh, they definitely fight afterwards, but I'm pretty sure the Parshendi and the Alethi were fighting before the treaty happened.
Yeah, maybe. I didn't get that from it, but
that's what I felt. But I could just be like interjecting that in just because of how much hatred they have for each other after the king dies.
Yes.
But yeah, Seth is like, I don't understand why the Parshendi would sign the treaty just to kill the king in the same night.
True. It is very mysterious.
So, as he kills the king, or rather, as the king is dying, the king is like, ah, I knew Thydakar was gonna finally come after me. And Seth's like, I don't know who that is. He goes, well, maybe it was so and so, or Restares, or Sadius. And like Seth's like, the Parshendi sent me. And
What?
it's like, what?
Why? Makes no sense. Before we move on, the fight is really cool. We're not gonna go blow for blow, but I do like it that like they did a little subterfuge where there's a shard bearer that's attacking them, and like a dude in Kling's clothing runs away, as but so the assassin's like, all right, I need to take care of the shard bearer, and the shard. I guess we should also go in the shard plate and stuff after this, but but so they have a fight, and he like kind of like beats him up, and he's like fixing to run after the king. He's like, wait a second, Gavilar is a really good warrior. What better like protection for a king is shard plate, and goes back and like kills the king. So it shows like both of them were really smart, and maybe the person who ran away will come back later as the decoy.
Maybe.
Maybe you should pay attention to who that was.
Well, there was also somebody else, and I don't even know, but somebody else stood out, and I don't know who it is, but it was like a beggar, or not even a beggar, but it was like a drunkard. There seemed to be a drunkard. Seth relegated him as a drunkard, but he looked at him and said, "Do you see me?" And he was like, "Oh, okay." As he took a sip from a wine skin, and Seth was like, "Oh, okay, it's the drink. It's just a crazy guy." So
Do
maybe
you
we'll
think?
find out who that is.
I don't know. I don't know who that is. Do you think it's Wit? I don't
I
think it's
don't
Wit.
I
I don't think
don't
it's Wit.
think so. I don't
Okay.
think it's Wit, but we will find out. Uh, we we probably will find out who. But he
Okay.
really it was just a weird thing to me, where it's like a
Yeah.
guy just is like, "Do you see me?"
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess just to do the shards, but they're really cool. Shard plates, basically really cool anime power armor. Um, where like it's interconnected, like plates of armors powered by Stormlight, makes you super strong and fast and stuff, and it's super cool. I just think of it as cool anime power armor.
It reminds me, there's an anime, I don't know if you watched it, Scried.
Mm. Escride, you mean?
S Yeah, did you watch that one?
Yeah, I watched right.
With Kazuma?
Yeah, a long
And
time ago.
it just reminds me of that, because as that series goes on, like it builds and builds, like their
Yeah,
power builds, and it kind of encases them at certain times. So
yeah. And then shard blades are like really cool anime swords that come out of mist. Mm. And like if you get slashed by it and don't die, your limb that got slashed by it dies. And if you do die, only thing that happens is your eyes kind of poof out smoke, and you just kind of fall over dead.
it's interesting the way they describe it, because he distinctly states that, unlike material objects, like non-living objects, when it slices through it, it doesn't slice through flesh. Like
Yeah,
it's almost like it phases through the flesh.
yeah,
And it says it doesn't just cut the flesh, it cuts the soul.
yeah. Just scary. And it's like a big 6 foot anime sword, so it's all cool.
Yes. Which is easier to hold when you're wearing shard plate. Is that true, or no? Or
I don't
is it
know.
light? It's super lightweight, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's super lightweight. That's why it's weird and that's why it also is good that it doesn't like there's like no resistance, so you can just kind of like wave it around and kill like that hundreds of people. Um, the last thing for this chapter that's important is that Gavilar gives a dying request to tell his brother that he must find the most important words a man can say.
And
Which,
also gives a black stone
yeah,
to Seth and tells him they must not get this.
yes.
So
I do not remember what that is, but I'm sure it's important.
yeah, I don't remember what it is either. But it is it's worth noting that Seth, even though he is the person that kills the king, he wishes that he did not have to kill.
Yeah.
Like he does not want to kill. He seems to have a personal code of honor and ethics that is that the Oath Stone circumvents.
Yeah, which is interesting. I don't remember if it's those stones magical or not.
I think it is. We do see, I mean, we do see it later
Yeah.
in an interlude. But yeah, when Gavilar was saying, "Tell my brother this," I was like, "Why would he go?" And then he's like, "Yeah, it stated that from where Seth is from, which is
Yeah.
what Azish
Shinovar,
or
right?
Shinovar.
Yeah.
Um, a person's dying request is held as sacred." And so
Yeah.
he takes Gavilar's finger, dips it in Gavilar's blood, and writes the message to
Yeah.
Dalinar. You must find the most sacred words that could be said.
And he's a man and he writes. Oh no.
Oh no. Yeah, we find that out that
Yeah.
men aren't supposed to be
Yeah. There's a lot of weird gender stuff, and I mean it's fantasy fun gender weirdness where they have like separate foods. Well, I don't think we get that this week, but
it,
women's
my
food.
my first reads, I completely just skipped over the safe hand thing.
Yeah.
And when I saw memes about it some years later, I was like, what the hell is all that? I don't remember any of that. And then now reading it, I'm like, okay, it is super obvious. They talk about it so much.
You have safe pouches and stuff. Yeah.
So, all right, so for these books, at least for the first book, we're not necessarily doing a chapter by chapter. Um, Sanderson has conveniently kind of listed the points of views in each part. And since we're dividing it into parts, we're going to go POV by POV. So this week we're going to move on to the Kaladin POVs first and go through all the chapters, and then go to the Shallan POVs and then do the interludes. So we get to chapter 1, which is Storm Blessed. And the chapter's POV is actually from a youngling named Sin,
Yeah.
who's just been thrust into he's a new recruit into Kaladin's squad, and Kaladin's in an army at the moment under we learn it's under Amaram,
Yep.
who's actually he is a lesser lord underneath High Lord Sadius,
Yeah.
and they're having border skirmishes um, instead of like fighting in the Shattered Plains. And so some of them are like wondering, why the hell are we fighting other High Lords when we should be fighting the Parshindi?
Yeah.
And so we meet Dalit, who's a veteran soldier. We meet Sin, which is um, a young new soldier, and Kaladin actually paid to have him transferred squads.
Yep.
And um, this is 5 years later after the king is killed. And so that's pretty much what happens in the chapter. We do learn about light eyes and dark eyes and being the different classes. Um,
Yeah.
the non-noblemen use spears to fight with instead of swords.
Yeah. They're not allowed the sword, which is interesting. I think that's probably. I mean, yeah, like you know, in like medieval times, the knights used swords, but like they had a bunch of spearmen, so it's kind of interesting, little parallel back to history.
Yeah, I actually like it a lot. because when you think about most fantasy stuff, a lot of people are using swords, right? A
Yeah.
lot of fantasy book series, it's the swords clashed, and that's all you hear, and that's what you see, and so it's it's a different kind of fighting. It's a breath of fresh air with fighting and the
Yeah.
things that he can do. It almost reminds me of Matt's
Yeah.
staff skills in Wheel of Time.
Yeah.
Which, speaking of Matt and his staff skills, it's just hilarious that it was only mentioned one time that Matt's dad was
Yeah.
like,
Apparently the greatest staffsman in all the land.
he's just mentioned once, and that was it. I was like, what? But that's a different series.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they had the easiest way out too. It's just like you got the memories of the past. Now you're a badass staff user. But oh well.
No.
But yeah, I wonder if writing Matt kind of made him want to do something with like a main character with a reach weapon, because he kind of writes. I mean, the Ashandarai and the spear are basically the same thing. So I could see him like kind of getting his chops writing some Matt fight scenes and be like, "Ooh, that's kind of fun. I want to do that in this book."
Yeah, he might have had enough time um to, because I know he had the Stormlight archives like mapped out
Yeah,
for a while. He might have had enough time to rework that. And I don't fully know his process, like where he puts placeholders in and then
yeah.
develops it. Uh
Or it could
and
have been just reading Matt and how Robert Jordan wrote a
it,
staff user. But ooh, cool.
oh yeah, I mean he's talked about it a whole lot, like his interview where he just explains how he got the job to finish the Wheel of Time. He talks about how the Wheel of Time influenced him
Yeah,
to become a writer, and with his writing and things that he does with his writing. So
yeah. This chapter kind of ends with a cliffhanger of shard bearers coming down to murder all of them.
yeah,
It's I like how they do like the regular plate mail, and he's like, "Is that a shard bearer?" It's like, "No," and then like the actual thing, the anime comes up, you're like, "That's the shard bearer."
and he's like, "Oh my God,
Yeah,
uh, how could I ever mistake regular plate mail for?"
yeah. Mm.
Yeah, so I don't think we really need to go into details of like
No,
what the fight was, but one thing, like, we definitely see that Kaladin is not just any old military guy. Like he
yeah,
knows stuff, and he's young. He's 19, right?
yeah.
Like somebody looked at him and I forget who it was. It might have been Sen. Like when he
Mm.
saw Kaladin, he goes,
Oh, so
"Wait,
young, yeah,
this young guy, he's only 4 years older than me, and he's the squad leader."
yeah,
Like it was unbelievable to him.
yeah, yeah. You get basically Callan's a good leader because his guys have like commands and like uh kind of signals, and then also that he's really good with the spear because he like solos like 6 people or something to save Sin, so you're like, oh shit, this guy is pretty badass. And then there's a cliffhanger.
Yep. And moves on to chapter 2, which is what, 8 months later.
Yep,
Did I get that? Yeah,
yep,
okay.
you're correct.
I did make it. I did write it in my notes, but I didn't see it before I said it. Got it right. I have
Nice.
redeemed myself for all the times I said something wrong.
Oh yeah.
So now we actually move to Kaladin's point of view. So it's really fun that chapter 1 wasn't from Kaladin's point of view. We got to
Yeah,
see it from a third person. And like you just see the awe in
yeah,
this person as they see Kaladin, and you're like, "Oh, Kaladin's amazing." And now chapter 2, Honor is dead. skips 8 months later, and we have no fucking clue what happened to Kaladin, but he's a slave now.
Yeah.
And he's got two brands on his forehead. One's fresh, which is Shash, the Shash brand, which it means dangerous.
Yeah.
And so
Because he's led a bunch of slave revolts and gotten captured every time.
yeah, like five of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, 5 times in 8 months. He's escaped and led slave revolts, which also reminds me of Mistborn.
Yeah. I don't know. You think though after like the second slave revolt they would just kill him, but I guess they're more merciful than that. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's a little weird.
it is, and they talk about it with the bridge crews. Like the only real killable offense is refusing to carry the bridge,
Yeah.
and like the way they kill you is that they cut your head off.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
I
Um,
mean, but I mean, he definitely killed some lad eyes in those revolts, so it's just whatever. It's one thing that I was like, really, 5 of them, and he survived every time. All right,
yeah.
interesting.
So we meet, uh, or Kaladin keeps noticing a wind spren that just is persistent
Yeah.
and just like following the wagon and seems to be flittering around. And he doesn't think anybody else can see it either.
Yeah.
Um, which kind of plays into we see a lot of mental health dealings, talkings, and characters with mental health issues in this book in the series. And so like Kaladin's obviously depressed at this point and it's kind of giving himself
I
up.
mean, yeah, rightfully so.
And he's in a cart that's being pulled by Chulls. There's a slave master and two mercenaries that are transporting them to we don't know where yet. Um, he's just he the other slaves in the cart have distanced themselves from him. So he's like sitting all alone,
Yeah.
and this wind spren is going around. So it's kind of like it's his only comfort.
Okay.
And you know, we're just we find out she's, you know, it's Syl. Her
Yeah.
name's Syl. Um, and you know, never mind. Sorry, I was gonna mention some. Don't have to yet, but there's a lot of names in this. Like almost everybody in this book has multiple names. Some like the heralds have like two, three, four names each. But
Yeah.
a lot of characters will have nicknames, and a lot of names are actually palindromes. I don't know if you kind of picked up on that.
Maybe I don't know. Probably not.
And so some of them aren't necessarily in English a palindrome because of a th or an sh or some things like that. But I think those are supposed to be represented as they would be represented as a glyph in Roshar.
Hmm.
So it would be one glyph for sh together or one glyph for th together. And so in Roshar, it would still hold that it was a palindrome.
Okay.
Um, if that makes sense. And sorry, that was just an aside, but
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I didn't catch that.
with the palindromes,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just something I was catching on this read through, and I was like, hey, that's very interesting, and I'm kind of curious if Sanderson had some reason for it, or if he was just like, I like palindromes, and so I want to put them into a book series.
I assume so. Yeah. Probably has some lore bit about it. But yeah, still is a special spren. because usually they don't have like personalities or talk to people.
Right. They're just like existing and
Yeah,
flittering in and out and go
yeah,
away.
there's little sprites. She, I just think of her as Tinkerbell. She's basically Tinkerbell.
Tinkerbell, Navi. Uh,
Yeah,
is it Navi from
Zelda, I think so.
Zelda? Zelda's fairy's name. Yeah, Navi. I was second guessing myself because the race in the Avatar movies are the
Other
Navi.
than that, yeah,
So I was like, that doesn't sound right, but why is my brain going this way? I'm like, I know I'm right. It's like, I'm getting gaslit by my nerd knowledge.
mm. Two things can be the same, or
Yeah,
can be true.
it can be. And like a word can be spelled the same way in English and be two different things.
What?
Like read and read,
It's true.
it's the same spelling. It confuses the hell out of kids. Thank
Yeah,
you, whoever wrote English.
yeah. English is pretty dumb.
Yeah, so there's some interesting things happen in this chapter. Um, we we get we learn that Kaladin has failed multiple people in his life.
Yeah.
Um, Tien, which in this chapter we don't know who Tien is. We do find out later that it is his brother. Um, he's failed Dalit and his team and 10 other groups of slaves, it says.
That's a lot.
So he's attempted a slave revolt 10 times. 5 of those times he has actually escaped but been caught in 8 months.
Yeah, that would get you a dangerous mark on your forehead.
Uh, he he attempts to prevent a sick slave from being disposed of. Like he's like, "Hey, you just give him water, he'll get better." He's like, "I don't trust you. We're just gonna kill him. He's already sick. He's gonna get everybody else sick." He's like, "No, no." And if that was that was an interesting bit that led to like, okay, Kaladin has some type of medical training.
Yeah, I think in the chapter it says like he was taught by his father or something like that. His father's teachings returned or something like that. I think so.
Yeah. So like,
Yeah,
yeah, at first it was just like when he first pointed out, it's like he had just this thought like, oh, this is happening. Well, this is the cure, such and such. And then later on, when he was pleading with Gaz, he was remembering like he thought about his father's training.
yeah. And
So
that's
we didn't get to simmer and theorize on why does he know this stuff for long.
yeah,
I guess it doesn't have much payoff.
yeah. I mean, it's just he's being taught to be a surgeon by his father.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the most. So I'm not the biggest Kaladin fan, but it's kind of the most interesting part of Kaladin that he's like a healer and a warrior. So he has to live with the dichotomy of those things. Um, like I don't hate Kaladin. It's just kind of he's kind of the more generic, like good guy character, like hero character. So he's always a little less interesting than the other characters to me.
Yeah, you mentioned he's like a healer and a warrior, but whenever I think about Dungeons and Dragons, clerics are usually like mace wielding, armor bearing fighters that can also heal.
Yeah,
So it's like he almost fits that archetype.
yeah. Except he doesn't have like, well, at least not yet, like magical healing. So he's more like dealing with the nitty gritty blood and mud of like actual healing, which is fun.
Yeah.
He can maybe later he'll if he has superpowers, which I assume he does. Wink, wink. Because he's the
Did
main character.
anything you have any interesting things that you noticed in this chapter?
Not really. Like uh, except for all that other stuff and getting this to see Syl for the first time is fun.
There was a minor mention of like kind of rumors of like old magic in the West that can curse people. And like I think it came up because Kaladin was wondering, is he cursed to just fail people? And
Yeah.
he's like, well, maybe that I've heard that there's a real world mechanic for people being cursed. Maybe that's maybe that's me. And this is what I have to deal with in life.
Maybe. Be cool to have a main character that's cursed by ancient magics to just be really good at stuff and fail. Yeah,
Uh
sounds.
it's funny, Brandon Sanderson's other young adult series, Alcatraz, he Alcatraz Smedley is the main character, and his superpower is breaking things. His uncle's superpower is always being late, and they actually are superpowers. Like they are beneficial.
That's fun.
I remember I bought the first book, Alcatraz, and if anybody's ever watching this show and you see me look in this direction, it's just because I have a bookshelf full of books on that side of the room, so I'm looking at them, trying to remind myself of titles. But uh, I remember in 2008, 2009, or something around there, I bought my nephew the first Alcatraz book and gave it to him, and he still has it to this day. I don't
Nice.
think he read any others in the series. I think there's 5 or 6, but
Hmm,
he still has that one.
very cool.
Oh, Cal does know how to read glyphs,
Yeah.
which it was note. I think Gaz noted that and is like, "Oh, you know how to do this, so you're not just some dark eye. Like
Yeah.
you're not just a dark eye. You're like a higher up
He's got
dark.
some education.
Yeah." So, and the chapter ends with them arriving at their destination, which we'll find out 2 chapters later,
Yeah.
because chapter 3 is Shallan, but we'll get to her. So we'll skip ahead to chapter 4, the Shattered Plains, which is their destination.
Yeah.
And again, it's the same group of people, Kaladin slaves, Vlakov, the Vlakov, the slave master, and the 2 mercenaries.
Yeah.
Um, Cal gets angry and just rips up a map.
Yeah. Like, now you'll die wandering the things. Like, no, the Shattered Plains are over there. We're good.
He's like, damn it.
We
Uh,
do get a little bit of High Storm stuff. Um, and it's kind of world building and Cal being, I like each early Cal chapters are fine world building, so not a lot happens in them. It's just kind of like I'm traveling in a wagon and being sad.
and we learn a lot about the characters.
Yeah, yeah.
We learn
Like
about the
they're
characters and the
important, but
world.
yeah, but like plot wise, not a lot happens.
No, no. But so Syl is having full conversations with Kaladin, like about crying.
Yeah,
And I think this is the first time she brings it up where she says, "You used to be something before this." And he's like, "What are you talking about? I only saw you like a couple days ago is the first time I saw you."
yeah. She's been watching him.
They
Is it? He also finds the poison, right? Or is it
the leaves.
poison leaves? Yeah.
Yeah,
Is that the yeah?
yeah. He does get the yeah, that's where he gets it, and he was trying to find a time to put them in the slave master's tea,
Yeah.
but he decided not to.
And then they like blow away, and he's like, "Oh no, I was gonna
Yeah.
kill myself, right, or something."
Later on, Syl returns in the last chapter that the poison
Yeah.
leaves do come back.
Yeah.
Um,
So
not the same ones that blew away, but
yeah.
they do use the high storms as a way to wash off the
Yeah.
slaves.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that is that brutal? Is it? I mean, they're slaves anyway, so I guess they
Yeah.
don't care. There's not really many rights for the slaves, right? It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's like, hey, you need a shower. Go stand out in the hurricane. Here's a Category 5 hurricane. Go do.
Yeah. I assume they do it kind of after it's passed and it's still just raining. Um.
Yeah, they do mention that because they put boards up around the cage while the
Yeah.
heaviest parts of the high storm are going by. But they're still like before it just quelled, they took them off and let them just kind of.
Yeah. The high storm is cool because it's one of those like fantasy things where like you introduce this constant hurricane cycle, and that like shapes the entire world. Like it's why the plants are all rocky and like hide away. It's why like all the cities are in these like kind of like rock outcropping type things. And so
Yeah,
it's an interesting world building thing I like a lot. It makes it
yeah.
unique.
And a lot of those are actually formed from just that erosion and that weather pattern
Yeah.
coming. Like we learned that Carbranth, I forget the term that they used. But Carbranth is sitting in a specific spot where it's um they call it a liet,
Yeah.
whatever that is, which they define as an area protected by high storms. And so, like, Carbranth itself is a protected city from the high storms.
Yeah. It's cool. I like it. And it's also I guess that's why like I guess we haven't mentioned like basically it's all crab all the time in this place. There's not a lot of like there are horses, but they're very rare, but it's like, you know, all all crab all the time. Like the chols are basically horse or cow crabs, and we'll get to bigger crabs later, but probably the next reading. Um but
Yeah,
yeah, it's
next
fun.
reading. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're in the
So
next.
yeah, so all the chols and all the little crabs, it's fun. And it's also another thing that makes it unique is it's a crab world.
Crab people, crab people.
I think that's what the ward bringers are, crab people.
The void bringers are crab people.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so we learned a lot about what Kaladin believes, his prejudices. So, like, he believes that all light eyes are corrupt. And he even goes as far as to describe them as they were like rotting corpses clothed in beautiful silk. So beautiful, but just like inside, just completely rotten.
Yeah.
It's like a gold leaf coated turd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's also an interesting like I guess caste system or like the color of your eyes determines your like status, social status.
Yeah, and beyond that, there's also the Dawn.
Yeah.
Like, he hasn't explained what that is, but there's different levels to, the
Yeah.
the Dawn, and
Like
then like the title Non, Nan, I think refers
yeah.
to the firstborn or the oldest.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like the like the Indian caste system, where like it's very strictly regulated, kind of where you are in society.
Yeah, I was thinking of that too. Um, there's a lot of parallels to different societies. I mean, obviously, it's an easy way to pull things from existing
Yeah,
cultures and say, okay, these people are most like these
yeah,
existing in on Earth. So,
yeah,
because I feel like Carbranth is kind of like a Southeast Asian,
could see it.
based off of a Southeast Asian place. And I don't have a particular one, like, maybe Malaysia or Indonesia, or
Hmm.
um, something like that. The Philippines, because a lot of them like almost like kind of hats and walking around, and the carts that they use to
Yeah,
around people.
they have a lot of palanquins and stuff, which is more Asian. Um, you see it more in Asian
Yeah,
stuff.
more in Eastern
Yeah,
Eastern societies than Western.
yeah, yeah, I can see it.
Let's. Oh, two other things we learned about the world is the Alethi laws state that slaves must be paid wages, although they are half that of non-slaves. So a bridgeman doesn't have to be a slave, but a slave bridgeman is going to be paid half as much as a non-slave bridgeman.
Yeah,
And the other, so at least the Alethi allow that. At
yeah,
least the slaves get paid, um, even if it's crap. At least
yeah,
they're getting paid. We'll fight for equity later on.
yeah.
Uh, but also, people believe, unrelated to slaves, people believe that the Stormfather and other monstrosities ride in the high storms.
Yeah,
So maybe one of those things is what fills the stormlight.
yeah. I don't think we get into their religion this week, but the Vorinism or whatever, which is
We get into it as much as learning that Yasna is a heretic.
yeah. I guess we'll say that for Shalon. Their religion is pretty interesting. The Alethi religion,
Yeah,
um, and it's pretty important.
it is. And of course, we mentioned it before. The storm wardens are Roshar's meteorologists.
Yeah,
Uh, and Kaladin is we find out he is very empathic, and he finds the slave master's flock of, however you say that name, to be very likable, and he hates that he's likable because he
Tabla.
still wants to kill him, but it makes him sad. It'll make him sad when he does finally, when he's like, I hate when I like an evil person, because then it's sad when I have to kill them.
Mm.
Uh, he
Well,
sent
yeah. Also, it's like you're just gonna get caught again. Like he's just kind of like a cog in the machine. So, uh, not super much of a point in doing that since he's already tried it 10 times.
Yeah.
He's kind of just stuck. I think he's starting to give up a little bit too.
Yeah, and he senses he spends a lot of time thinking about other people, and he thinks of the slave master, and he gets a sense that he was forced into the line of work through hardship. Like, he doesn't necessarily want to be a slave master, but maybe there were some failed ventures before that just kind of forced him into this.
Yeah. Yeah, Letty kind of remind me of either kind of like Greeks and Romans with like their city states with the high lords and like the slave stuff and like you know, all that sort of stuff. Like the light eyes kind of, and like their higher ups kind of remind me of like the Roman upper crust you see a lot of movies and stuff like that, which is fun.
Yeah. Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Chapter 6, Bridge 4.
Ooh.
So Kaladin is sold to a bright-eyed lady, Hashel. She is under High Prince Sadius. He gets 1.25 emerald brooms ahead when he asked for, I think it was 2.
Yeah.
He was asking like 2 or 3. So
Yeah.
she gave him a whole lot less than he asked for. He then warns her that there aren't to be trusted with weapons, especially Kaladin, and that the group that was in the group of slaves, he says that the group of slaves in the cart with Kaladin were probably corrupted by him, and they aren't to be trusted either. And so they get put to work as bridgemen.
Yeah. Yeah, they reach the Shattered Plains when there's all the Alethi high princes, and they're going to war against the Parshendi for killing the king that we saw in the prelude or prologue. And yeah, so he's sold to High Prince Sadius as a bridgeman, and we'll find out what that is shortly.
In this chapter.
Yeah. Because yeah, so basically, like the Shattered Plains is a cool environment. It's basically like a bunch of dunes that have like great like uh, troughs of I don't know how you explain it.
Plateaus with chasms?
Yeah, plateaus with chasms.
Yeah.
Words are dumb. Um, so in order to cross them with armies, you have to have bridges, and they're like mobile bridgemen, basically. Which sounds like a terrible job, especially since when you reach the battlefield, the Parshendi shoot you with arrows, and you don't have anything to protect you.
Yeah, that's terrible. Trying to pull up a map of
Shattered Plains.
the Shattered Plains because I got a map here at the beginning of this chapter. There's a map of the lumber
The
yard,
war camp, yeah.
and yeah, war camp. There's the lumber yard, and so you also learn that each high prince has their own like war camp,
Yeah.
and they all have their own bridge crews, and when they get, you know, we don't know yet why,
Yeah.
but there's an alert, and then they all race out into the Shattered Plains to some place in the middle where they meet up with the Parshendi
Yep. And have a battle.
and have
So
a
yeah,
battle.
you definitely get the sense that they're not united. They're just all kind of doing their own thing. They're all like individual city states
Yeah.
under their high lords.
I can't find it in the book. Maybe I'll pull it up in the thing.
Yeah.
Whatever. There's a lot of cool art in
Yeah.
here. The war camp map was not drawn by Shalon,
No.
but a lot of like there's a page with Chulls and there's a page with sky eels,
Yeah.
and those are sketches in Shalon's sketchbook,
Yep.
which is fun. And each of the things is there's a map of Alethkar in here too, and it says it's was one that was in the king's room.
Yeah.
So they're all set up
Like
as
in-world.
in-world books, drawings.
Yeah.
Of
It's
course,
cool.
the title of the book is an in-world book, which we'll learn in the next section, I think.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. So he immediately goes on a bridge run, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Um.
goes on a bridge run, and he describes it as being worse than any beating or punishment in his life.
Yeah, because how much do you think those bridges weigh?
Oh man, how
'Cause
big are
it's
they?
what like uh, it has to be pretty big. It's probably what you'd have to. There's like what two
Some of the
horses?
chasms are like 20 to 30 feet
Yeah,
across.
it take like 40 people to in a bridge crew, I think.
Yeah, so if a man around there, their average that they can hold overhead is about 125 pounds, which obviously is going to get heavier. But I'll just say an average of 125 pounds times 40 people. I mean, that's 5,000 pounds,
Hmm.
and a lot of the bridge crews don't even have a full
Yeah,
40
full 40
person
people.
crew. Um,
And you have to like run. You have to be fast with it. Ooh, that would you. If you would, I would be dead.
yeah, and I mean 125. I mean, the most I've pressed overhead is 185 and 190, close to 200 pounds. So I think 125 is reasonable.
Yeah, but also going, I don't know, 5 miles.
Oh yeah, running that
Yeah,
much and
yeah,
then setting it down, sliding it across,
picking it
waiting
back
for
up.
everybody, then picking it
Yeah,
back up. So how do you slide it across 30 feet?
I'm guessing you like, yeah, I don't know.
I don't right now.
Yeah, because it would tip.
Yeah, it would tip over
Yeah,
and go into the chasm. So, but also I think they described them as having a little arch. So like it has a ramp up and a ramp up and then a flat area
mm.
across.
So maybe you have to like lift it and then like set it down.
Yeah. I don't know, I swore from previous reads
I
that
think there is a
an
picture somewhere.
explanation,
Yeah,
but not here.
yeah,
Um, I do have a highlight at the end of this chapter, but we can get to it in a bit.
yeah.
Um,
But yeah, bridge runs sound like the worst thing ever. It's one of the things that captured my attention on the first read. I'm like, wow, this is really interesting and cool, but it's also horrible. Ugh.
oh yeah, and I made a note here. Sanderson could really have easily written the contents of this chapter in like 2 pages,
Yeah,
like describe bridge crews and their purpose. He could have really less than 2 pages. But he uses it, uses his this chapter to really one put us in Kaladin's state of mind
yeah,
about how just miserable Kaladin is in general, and then how miserable bridge carrying is. Like,
yeah,
I wouldn't want to do this. And not to mention with, like, all right, it's hot. It's probably humid. And then high storms are coming.
yeah.
I'm
Then
going
you,
to pull up this quote. So you talk, is there anything else you wanted to mention on this?
uh, just that and you kind of get the sense that he might have some magic because the Parshindi's shoot and it like goes all around him. He's like, oh my god, it's a miracle.
Yeah, I love that he's like, at first he gets put in the back and he's like, man, this is fucking terrible. Like, I can't see anything.
Yeah,
And they're like, yeah, that's the worst spot. And then when they get to where the fighting is happening,
you're in the front.
he's like, you're up front. He says, what? What did I do to get this honor? And then he's like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so they have to run up. Basically, the Parshinди are on one of the plateaus, and they have to run, set down the bridges so the army can storm through and like have a cohesive beachhead basically of so they can have enough troops to pass through. So as they're running, the Persian are like killing them to stop the amount of bridges so they can only fight in certain spots. So it's a very dangerous job, and a lot of them die.
Yeah, just about. In fact, only him. Oh no, that was later. More people survived on that one, but it was like a couple chapters later. It's just him and one person
Yeah.
that survived that was left from the first run he did.
Yeah, you definitely understand why they're having to use slaves for this, because no free man would ever volunteer unless there's a lot of money, but I, they don't pay bridge people a lot.
No, he gets 5.
Yeah,
Kaladin gets 5 a
clear
week.
marks. Yeah,
Yeah.
which I can. The money is kind of divided with the color of the gem and stuff like that. So that's an interesting money system too.
Yeah.
You kind of intuit it as it goes along.
Yeah. So I highlighted something here and wanted to discuss that. We may have actually discussed it, but I can't remember what I highlighted. So I'll just read the highlighted. So Kaladin, it's literally the last 3 paragraphs in chapter 6. Kaladin walked feeling numb. He thought that there was nothing more life could do to him, nothing worse than the slave's brand with a shash, nothing worse than losing all he had to the war, nothing more terrible than failing those he'd sworn to protect. It appeared that he'd been wrong. There had been something more they could do to him, one final torment to the world had reserved just for Kaladin, and it was called Bridge 4.
Yeah.
So Kaladin, he's things are just not looking great for him.
No,
Like
he's uh
he's like the tragic hero, right?
yeah.
But
And
he's not even a hero yet.
yeah, we do get Sill's name drop this chapter too, which is fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's like a tragic, you know, it's the Bane. I was born in the darkness. It's kind of Kaladin right
I
now.
was molded by it.
Molded by it. So pretty soon he'll climb up a wall and go back to Gotham City.
And break Batman's
And
back.
be Batman, yeah. Yeah. Kaladin does have kind of a tragic, like Batman-esque hero.
Yeah, I can see that.
Not really a vigilante, at least right now. Not right now, but he's got like a tragic, mysterious background.
Yeah.
He's failed people. He's all sad, and he's the bridge duty.
Which sucks. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
How long do you think he could do bridge duty besides the arrows, just like the running part before you broke down?
I would probably break down the first day.
Yeah. Actually, I guess a better thing. How much would you have to be paid to do bridge duty?
Oh God. More than I get paid to do what I do right now.
Yeah. Like
Like, maybe
$1 million for a year. Would you do it?
no.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Me neither. But there's probably a number where you're like,
There's a number.
maybe
There's a number.
$1 billion. Like maybe.
Shit. Yeah, I'd run a bridge for $1 billion a year.
Yeah, but you have to do it for a year. And every once in a while, the Parshendi show up. Not every time.
I would do it for a year.
All right.
Can I retire after the year?
Yeah, it's 1 year for $1 billion. Right. So
Yeah, maybe $1 billion.
Yeah, it'll take something drastic.
Is the stock market still a thing though?
Yeah, but you get transported back to our world with $1 billion.
Awesome.
And,
Yeah.
And the IRS knows about this for some reason.
No.
So you get taxed with your $1 billion.
Hey, that's still. I mean, hey.
Yeah.
in tax on $1 billion, you still have
Yeah,
what,
I mean,
650 million?
something like that.
Yeah,
Mm,
somewhere around there, right?
Probably, yeah.
If you can't live out the rest of your life with $650 million on hand, and you really have squandered something.
Oh yeah.
You you suck with finances.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I don't even know if I would do it for that because I would probably just break in half.
yeah, hey, you'd be buff.
I would be buff, yeah.
You would. Calendon does mention that the one of the advantages of running bridges is you get muscles.
Yeah. Maybe I should put it in your workout routine. All right, guys. We have a gym. It's called the Caledon's Gym. And it's just running with this bridge for an hour.
You can have it broken up into uh, pieces so you can build upon it and make the bridge longer for more
Yeah.
people. So it'd be like um a whole new meaning to CrossFit.
There you go. Bridge fit.
Bridge fit. You're crossing the chasms. Where's the
Yeah.
cross come from? You're crossing the chasms.
Yeah. Then we have to figure out how to. We need to find some chasms in Louisiana, which might be hard.
Hey, you know, we can make the bayous work.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. You
Run
got
a
to just
bridge.
deal with snakes in the woods
Oh my
and
god.
stuff.
It's like Caledon. At least you don't have to run the bridge through a bayou. That would suck.
That would suck. I mean, you have to deal with alligators, swampy, wet feet,
Yeah.
um, snakes, trees,
Yeah.
poison ivy.
Yeah.
Ugh. Yeah, put me on the plains instead.
Yeah.
So we'll move on to chapter 9, Damnation. We continue with the Shattered Plains. It's now been 2 to 3 weeks after the first bridge run. Maybe he's not. Kaladin's not even sure. He's like, I've lost track of time. Uh,
Yeah.
but we know that
We get some cool chill pictures too.
yeah. See, and that's a Thalena guy, right? That's a
Yeah.
he's Thana because his eyebrows are
All
his
fanned out.
fanned out above. It reminds me of the guy that walked with Shalon Yalb. Yeah. I made a note here. Yeah, Yalb is the one that he's not an ardent, he's a pirate. So anyway,
Yeah.
back to Damnation. So Bridge 4 is actually the crew that loses the most people. They put Kaladin there because of that. So who the hell has things out for Kaladin and why? Probably the High Lords.
I got it because he was like deserter and the dangerous. They're like, we might as well get the dangerous one killed off pretty quickly.
Yes. Yeah, that makes sense. Totally. Kaladin is feeling very depressed. He thinks he is in a group of people that exist only to be killed or be saved, and not to kill, not to save. We learned that his dad said, "Son, there are only two types of people in the world: those that kill and those that save." And he's like, "What about those that kill to save?" He's like, "You can't. That's impossible." But Kaladin thinks that there's actually is a third group, and it's those people that live to be killed or to be saved. Those are their only fates, and they can do neither.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, Kaladin has killed people.
Yes, he is. Because he is a pretty good warrior, as we saw in the first chapter.
Yes, he is. He's amazing.
Yeah.
Syl is trying to cheer him up. And he finds it, this is where he finds it weird that she seems like she keeps talking about, like, hey, you were this way. You were never this way before this. And he's like, I never saw you before that moment in my life.
Yeah.
And so maybe she's just been following him around, and maybe he's attached to her in some way.
Maybe. I don't know.
Uh,
Yeah, it's a fun little mystery in this kind of bleak section of the book where he's all, you know, just waiting to die type thing, where you get this little like Tinkerbell trying to help him out.
it's almost like a coping mechanism, or like, you know, a trauma block. He's like, not that it's not real, but it almost still serves this purpose.
Yeah,
This fairy serves this purpose of, it's his reprieve, his escape from the reality of things.
yeah,
Almost like a conscious too, like Jiminy Cricket. Um,
yeah,
so
yeah. I like Sil a lot. She's a good addition to the book.
and so we get more new recruits because people keep dying. There's another young one that comes in and reminds him of his brother Tien and of Sin, who we don't know the fate of. I mean, we don't know why, but we get the sense that Sin was killed as well.
Yeah,
So, like,
which I mean, we saw a shard bearer at the end of the first chapter, so we can kind of assume that probably that got murdered then, but we don't actually know anything. But that's what I took from it.
yeah. And that character, this new young recruit, is short lived because they go on a run and he dies immediately. And Kaladin cries.
Yep, very sad.
And that, I mean, that's that chapter.
Yeah, it's gonna be really funny going from this to Shallan, and then Shallan read a book. I wonder if they probably. I mean, we're going just one story, but I think the Shallan chapters are pretty good for breaking up the bleakness of Kaladin's story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But at times I'm like, I remember when I first read it, or the second read, I forget how many times I've read it now, but I was like, man, I just want to go back to Kaladin. I want to know the whole story
Yeah,
without breaking up. So, excuse me.
yeah,
So, chapter 10, Story of Surgeons. This is a flashback 9 years earlier in this town village of Hearthstone, which is where Kaladin's from.
yeah.
We meet his mom, or we meet his dad. We learn his mom's name. So his dad is Lyran.
There, yeah, Lyran, I guess. I don't know.
His mom is Hashima, and or Hashima, however you want to say it. Whether you want to use a Japanese style or English style.
Yeah,
And then Sani is a young girl that's her hand is injured. I don't remember if we found out why,
I don't think so.
but Kaladin knows Sani, and so his dad's trying to fix her hand, but unfortunately he's gonna have to cut some of the fingers off. We do learn that his dad does not charge for his medical
Yeah,
services, which Kaladin thinks is weird because like his dad tells him something like be careful of too much care. What is at the end of that chapter?
yeah.
He was
Basically, you have to like distance. You can't care too much, or you'll go insane.
yes,
Because you'll inevitably people will die, and if if you don't have enough thick skin, like it'll break you.
yeah.
Which is true. Like if you're in those, like if you're in the military or like a nurse or a doctor or something, you see, you know, death. Like you have to care, but you can't care too much, or you'll like. I guess you would go insane.
Yeah, like if you went to work in hospice,
Yeah.
sure, you could be sad when the people you're caring for pass away,
Yeah,
but like can't just like be wrecked.
yeah. You have to have a
Get
Uh, uh,
wrecked. Oh
you have to have
God.
a barrier of your emotions and your feelings, which I don't have that job, so I imagine it is tough to do, but it is a necessary thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We talked about you brought it up earlier, but in this one is when I made the note of nons are like a caste class system. We don't know much about it, but it does come up often.
yeah,
Radiants were orders of knights that the heralds founded, and so and we learned this. Laren is just talking,
yeah,
and the Radiants betrayed humanity according to Laren's belief after the heralds left.
yeah.
So it's not
Which
necessarily a fact that they did, but it's his belief that they betrayed
and
humanity.
and well, we kind of know it because we saw it in the prelude.
Well, those are the heralds that left.
Yeah,
So, like to me, the heralds betrayed humanity,
yeah,
not the Radiants. But we don't know enough about the Radiants yet to know if they did
yeah.
something even more terrible, almost
Yeah.
like almost
We
like
don't.
the heralds were the judicial system, like the governing body for the Radiants. And once
Yeah,
they left, the Radiants just decided, hey, we're powerful and we can do whatever the hell we want.
yeah.
Um, but I think even if that's the case, the ultimate betrayal comes down to the heralds leaving.
Yeah, they basically believe that like the heralds, which are like basically angels sent from the Almighty, which is God, uh, they kind of taught mankind how to fight the Voidbringers, which is basically the devil. Um, and so basically they have the Radiants were like the chosen champions of the angels, and then supposedly they uh, betrayed mankind, and we'll see if that's correct or not.
Yeah.
But that's like the basic belief system. It's like we have Almighty God, and then we have the Heralds, which are basically the angels, and then we have the Radiants, which are like the angels' champions.
Yes. And then everybody else.
Yeah, and then everybody else in the Voidbringers are like the devil or demons, which we don't actually know what they are, but that's
Yeah.
basically what they believe.
And also, Kaladin wants to become a soldier.
Yeah.
And his dad wants him to become a surgeon like him. Uh, Mostly his dad is a pacifist.
Yeah.
So,
And I'll just say this now since I won't have to do it later. There's a spoiler, there's a lot of these flashbacks in this book of Kaladin's past. I think, in my personal preference, rereading this book a couple of times, I think you could cut like maybe half of them and trim this book down a little bit. They're still good and stuff. It's just like at a certain point, you're like, all right, like not a crazy amount of like plot or character happens in a couple of them. We'll probably get to later, but
and
that's just kind of my feel on the
that's true for
flashbacks.
each of the books. Each of the books, it's the flashbacks are for a particular person. Book two, the flashbacks are for, and I don't think this is a spoiler, but book two, the flashbacks are for Shallan. Um, and forget I forget the flashbacks on the other ones. It's not important at this time.
Yeah,
We'll
I
see
guess
that when.
we'll find out. But yeah, I don't remember how book two's flashbacks, if there are a lot of them or not. But just at a certain point, I'm like, all right, I get it. Like this book's very long. You could probably cut out 150 pages and like tighten it up a little bit. But I still enjoy this book a lot.
Yeah, I really love it. So
Yeah.
we'll move on to chapter 11, which goes back to Kaladin's current phase, present phase.
Yep.
And he basically has had enough. And during the high storm, leaves the camp to go to the honor chasm. And as he's leaving, he sees Gaz like on the side of the roof holding a bucket full of his gems, trying to get them to be refilled with stormlight. And at first, Gaz is like, "Oh, you're deserting?" He goes, "No, I'm just going to the honor chasm." He goes, "Oh, okay. Well, see you later."
Yeah.
They don't care if their bridgemen commit suicide. Like, so
Oh, yeah. Don't they say it's like if they didn't give them that one choice, like they'd probably just like revolt or try to like, you know, like you have to have a little like way out if it comes to that, which is very very bleak. Um,
it is very sad.
but we also see, and it does a really good setup with how hard the bridge runs are that like people would be driven to that. Um, it's very callous the way Sadius and all of them use the bridgemen and basically make them get to that point of suicide.
Yeah. So Kaladin is literally his foot is one foot is off of the edge of the cliff. Oh, before that, the previous chapter, uh, the previous chapter that he was in, I think Damnation,
Mm.
Syl left him.
Yeah, because he was getting. She was like, I can't see like this. I'm gonna. She leaves
Yeah,
him.
she says she has to leave, but fears she'll lose herself if she does, and she'll try to return.
Yeah,
That was something big that I skipped over then.
yeah. Mm.
uh, but here she actually shows up as he's got one foot off the ledge, and she shows up with the leaves, the poison leaves that had blown away, of the same type that had blown away before, and pleads him to not jump.
Yeah,
And she says, "I brought you these because you seem to really go down and lose hope of everything once these leaves had left you before."
yeah. And yeah,
And it works.
does work.
And he decides to go back to the camp, and Gaz is like, "Oh, you too chicken to do that?" At which point Kaladin basically says, he says, "No, I'm worse than that. I've died already and I'm back."
Yeah,
And he like grips him on the throat, threatens him, says, "You can't do anything to me because I've already died. But listen, I'm the bridge I'm the bridge master, bridge leader, and you're going to leave all these decisions to me. You're going to let me do this. Also, I'm not going to pay down my slave debt. I'm gonna get paid."
yeah.
And he's like, "Well, why would I let you do that?" He says, "Because I'm gonna pay you one of every five that I get paid."
I guess this. Yeah, I guess the slaves are more like old school serfs, or like they still earn a little bit of money. But I guess serfs weren't like they could like I don't think they could leave their lands and stuff. So
Yeah,
I kind of
almost. It's like indentured servitude
yeah
because they have a debt that they have to pay. If the
yeah
debt's paid off, then they're no longer a slave.
yeah, which is interesting.
So,
Yeah,
um,
but yeah, it's good. Also it shows that this Spren can like affect the material world. Like they're not just like spirits or whatever. They can actually. I mean, she says it's really heavy, so they probably can't do much, but at least she does a little bit, which is interesting.
yeah,
And
we do know she can't pick up things like she can't pick up a lot of stuff.
yeah,
There's some things that she can make move.
yeah,
Um, and the leaves, she brought the leaves back, but like there's a limit to what she can affect physically.
yeah,
So after Kaladin threatens Gaz, he goes into the camp, the barracks, and introduces him to Teft himself to Teft, and this is the first named bridgeman outside of Kaladin that we learn.
Yep.
And at first he's like, "What do you want? Stop talking to me. Go away." He's like, "I'm the bridge leader, and things are going to change."
Yeah.
And this is it looks to be a change for better,
Yeah.
anti-depressing for Kaladin, and it we know he was depressed when he was not really connecting to anybody,
Yeah.
right? And now he introduces himself to Teft. Then afterwards, he goes and talks to all of the other bridge crew members one by one.
Yeah. I
We
do
don't
like.
we don't learn their names, but
Yeah. So I do like, isn't it? So he's like, I failed them, and she's like, well, you can try with the bridgemen. They're just gonna die anyway, so you wouldn't have failed. That's like their job is to die. So like, all you can do is succeed if you try with the bridgemen. That kind of like motivates him to start back up. Because yeah, we learn, he says like he's failed every single time he's tried to protect people, and with him being such a great warrior and leader, like yeah, the Survivors Guild is really laying laying heavy on him.
yeah, that's one thing I don't want to experience. So like probably will. Um, I mean, hopefully not, but Survivor's Guilt, it sounds terrible.
Yeah, man.
So,
Yeah,
but yeah, I'm
he decides to try.
excited to see this new Kaladin and what he does with Bridge 4.
Yeah.
I'll say I'd like Bridge 4.
Oh yeah,
So,
they're good. Is an important thing for this book.
all right. So now we're going to move on to Shallan's point of view chapters, which is City of Bells. So we get a completely different style of setting here
Yeah.
with Carbranth, which is known as the City of Bells. Shallan is the youngest of 5 kids. She's Vaden, so she's from Yakaved. Her father is dead,
Yes.
and she was sent on a mission to save her family, her family's debts. So she's going to go meet with Yasna Kholin, who's the sister of the king, um, and become her ward.
Yep.
We also meet Tazbek, who's a ship captain, and Yalb is one of the pirates on the ship. And she rode this ship to Carbranth. And the ship's name is the Wind's Pleasure. And her family's financial state is just dire. They've got debtors coming for
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Very dire. They're kind of like a lesser house, which is interesting. And I think she kind of sent herself on the mission. Like she came up with it herself.
Yeah, she came up with that idea.
Yeah.
Like she wants to. So basically, her family's soul caster has stopped working, and they think it's broken. And she wants to go steal Yasna Kolin's soul caster
Yep.
to then continue soul casting. Like, was it marble deposits that her dad was
Yeah.
soul casting? And he was like creating wealth for his family, but only at calculated intervals. Like, he didn't want to just have a whole bunch of wealth. It was just like,
Yeah.
oh, hey, look, I found another deposit of marble.
Yeah. And they don't know where he got a soul caster from either.
Right. But it kept the family, like his father was a notorious, like he is well known but not liked,
Yeah.
local politician.
Yeah. Seems like a terrible person, and you kind of get that Shallan has been kind of like secluded in her house. Like her father was very protective of her, so she just was like shut away. And that's kind of done her personalities. That's why she kind of is very I guess cheeky. She just makes a lot of like quips, and she's not very like refined and ladylike because she's been on her own for like most of her life. So I would guess she probably like talk to herself a lot and like kind of make up these little quips that she likes to do.
Yeah, and I mean this chapter sets most of that up, and so the majority of the chapter takes place. It starts off when they're on the ship, and then she's being escorted by Yalb to wherever
That the big library.
the Palladium.
Yeah.
Yeah, didn't she went somewhere else first, right? So she's been searching for Yasna for a while, and like she had sent a letter, and Yasna said, "Yeah, let's meet here." And so she went to where Yasna told her to meet, and Yasna had left already. And so now
Yeah.
she's been chasing her.
Yeah. Because Yasna's like a big scholar. They don't actually know why she's been moving so much, but yeah, she finally called her up. Called up to
Yeah,
her.
so they get to the docks and they check the records, and Yasna, there's no leave entry of leaving from the docks for Yasna. So they're like, "Oh, she's still here." And so she goes to find her, and I don't think it was uh I don't think they were at the Palladium yet, because they were somewhere else. Yasna was with the king of Carbret, Teravangian,
Yeah.
right? Or no, sorry. Teravan, that's the next chapter.
Yeah.
Okay. So
This
she doesn't,
chapter's a lot of her just kind of like experiencing the city. You get a lot of world building of Cabral,
which
which
is
is
really cool. So like the city, and all the buildings, I think all the buildings here, I know all the buildings of the war camp are soul casted.
Mm.
There's buildings in the city that are probably soul casted as well,
Yeah.
and they're color coded. The buildings are color coded by purpose. So like I forget the colors. I think green is food. Um, so it's really cool. So you're like, all right, I need to find some food. All right, there's a green building. I'll go to the green building.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about like, all right, what's the sign say?
Yeah. And soul casting is another magic system we learn in her chapters, which are it's basically like a device, it's like a little like sphere that you can use to like you don't really get too much into it, but you can like use it to turn something into another thing. Like you basically transmute like a, a rock into smoke and stuff like that, as you see later.
Yeah, we see in a minute.
Yeah, so like it's a very so like that's what third magic system we get in the book. We get
Yeah, so
the
we'll have
shard plates and
Stormlight.
stuff, and then we get the lashings, and then we get soul casting. If you count the shard blades and stuff as magic system.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, so we have three so far that all kind of use the same Stormlight, except for the shard blades, because they don't have anything. You don't really know what they do, how they work.
We do know that they use Stormlight.
The shard blades? I know
Yes.
The plate does.
Oh, the plate does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, the shard blades. I don't think. Yeah, they're a mystery. They come out of thin air. They go into like an extra dimensional space when they're not being used. They're cool.
Doesn't the shard plate do that too?
Mm-mm. Now you have to like put it on.
Oh, okay. I forgot.
Yeah.
Whatever.
We'll find out with Dalinar.
Yeah. Yeah, so this entire chapter is just Shallan traveling from a boat on the dock to a palace to meet the king's sister.
Mhm.
But we do learn so much about the world through her inner thoughts.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that her inner voice might actually have a shortage of breath.
Yeah.
Because she talked so much.
Yeah.
Um, so like we also she drops things that we don't are we're like, okay, that's a thing in the world, but I don't know what the hell that means. Like
Mm,
the last desolation. Okay, maybe that's the prelude.
yeah.
What's the hierocracy? What's the recreants?
Yeah.
Like,
There's a lot of that in this book so far. It's kind of like he likes to do that because like the prelude is just like a bunch of names and like weird stuff. You're like, "Oh, okay, that will probably be important later." A lot of the prologue is like this and this and this and these names and stuff. So it's an interesting way of like world building where it's like we're gonna give you a bunch of names and you're just gonna slowly kind of figure it out through context clues and stuff.
what's funny though is to me, a lot of times on a first read of this, I just like, okay, hierocracy. I just passed over that word and didn't think of it, until
Yeah.
it started to become more and more things. And there's also some characters where I'm just like, okay, the first time I meet them was like, okay, that seems like a minor character. And then later on,
Yeah.
they're a major character. I'm like, well, where the hell did we meet this person? And I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I have to go back and check on things. I just like put things aside.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have you can only hold so much information. Where it's like, that when that becomes important, I'll remember it, or they'll tell me again.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, you get a lot of little drops of name proper nouns, and you're like, okay, that sounds cool, but you don't exactly know what it is yet.
Yeah, we'll get to some more proper nouns here because like memory, like that seems like another magic system where
Interest-
Shallan blinks and
Oh,
stores
yeah,
something to memory, but once she starts to draw it, it it's almost like a pensieve thing in Harry Potter.
yeah, yeah,
She puts it on paper and it's no longer in her head. And but like okay, well that's interesting.
yeah.
But we'll move on to chapter 5, Heretic. I think we
Yeah,
covered everything in that first chapter.
yeah. It's a fun little introduction to the character.
Yeah. So she arrives in at a palace. Um, I really it really bothers me that I don't know what this is because during this chapter they hear a noise and they go, the Palladium, and they rush off to it, and that's where like the stone is blocking the path. And so anyway, um it's in Carbranth. Shallan shows up, and Taravangian is the king of Carbranth, and Yasna. They're talking, uh, and we learn that okay. Well, soulcasters. I think we might have touched this. Soulcasters refer to people and the object that they use to create fabrials.
Yeah,
So, like soul casting can create fabrials as well. So, what a fabrial is, we'll find out. Um, Yasna has interviewed 12 potential lords so far this year. And
yeah,
we learned that most of them, once they went to the first place and Yasna wasn't there, they gave up. And so Yasna is uh, impressed so far. And so she starts to question Shallan on her studies, like
yep,
the sciences, mathematics, philosophy, history. And she has some very glaring holes
yeah.
in some of this knowledge.
Yeah, we also learned that Yasna is super hot.
Yes.
Which was really funny.
And
She's like,
she's what,
she's like,
36?
yeah, she's like, man, I didn't know Yasna was so hot. It's just funny.
Yeah, yeah. She was like,
Like
okay,
an old like crone,
an
basically.
old spinster.
Yeah,
But yeah, she's super hot. Apparently all Alethi have just jet black hair and or the light eyes.
yeah.
I have jet black hair. Um,
Shallan is a redhead.
Shallan is a redhead. A lot of Aidens are redheads.
Yep.
And so Shallan impresses Yasna with the uh so Yasna asks her, says, how would you determine the size of the stone? He says, well, I'd ask the king what the mass of the stone is, because he would obviously know. Like,
Yeah.
and so like a stone had fallen in front of a doorway and trapped the king's granddaughter. And so knowing the mass of the stone was uh needed for Shallan to do her, not Shallan, Yasna to do her soul casting, but
Yeah.
she soul casted it and turned it into smoke,
Yep.
which put soot everywhere as well. And so she did that and ran off into to go to the Millennium. And
Yeah.
after rejecting Shallan as a ward.
Yeah.
So
Because Shallan has, like you said, glaring holes in her things, and because she was stuck in a room all day and didn't really get a good formal education.
she was abused.
Yeah.
So traumatic. So the things that connect Shallan and Kaladin are they have a very traumatic upbringing,
Yeah.
but they come from two different classes.
Yeah.
Like Shallan is a lesser noble, but she's
Yeah.
still a light eye. Whereas Kaladin is a higher dark eye.
Yeah.
So they're actually almost like they're almost the same, but there's this imaginary line that's just like dividing them, and they're like one step from each other.
Yeah.
Like Shallan's one step above Kaladin, and Kaladin's just one step below.
Yep.
And you mentioned how hot Yasna is, but she's also very regal. Like
Yeah.
really, it just really the way she talks, the way she presents herself, her dresses. She is like Shallan definitely said that is the king's sister.
Yeah.
Like when she first saw her, that is the king's sister. There is no doubt about that.
Yeah. And we also learn the title of the chapter is Heretic, that Yasna is a heretic. She basically, um, we don't get too much into religion, but
Rejects Vorinism.
she has Vorinism, which is the name of, I guess, the dominant religion of the regions.
Yeah, so there are, let's see, there are four. So there are four Vorin kingdoms, I think, but that surprised Shallan. Like Yasna said something about all four Vorin kingdoms or something, and Shallan's like four. It was either four or five, but Kharbranth, Alethkar, and Yaakoved are all Vorin kingdoms.
Yeah.
And there's either four or five. So regardless of how many there are, Shallan only knows of one less than there actually are. And it was surprised when there was one extra, which isn't listed. It wasn't named. It wasn't named. It was just dropped that, oh, hey, there are this many. He goes, what? There are? Which I think goes to show, I think that feeds into Shallan's lack of education as well.
Yeah, definitely.
It helps to set that up more like, oh, she thinks she knows. It's like if you go up to, somebody and go, I know jujitsu, I can do this, this, and this. And somebody goes, oh, how do you do this? And they're like, what?
Yeah.
What is that? And it's like something that's like blue belt level.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's that.
Yeah. It's interesting to see the Soulcaster in use, and she's like, I'm gonna steal that thing.
Yeah, and it's really cool because it's like it's two rings and a wrist, a bracelet, and there's chains connecting all three. and it kind of goes on the back of her hand. Is it on her safe hand or is it on her free hand?
I would guess it'd be on her free hand.
Okay, that would make sense because otherwise nobody would see it unless it was on the outside
Yeah.
of the covering. Which there was a meme about it. I saw it was from some it was a clip from some Will Ferrell movie, but it's a uh when Rosharan see a woman with fingerless gloves, and it's like, what does that mean? And Will Ferrell's character is like, I don't know, but it's provocative, and I like it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the ankles showing in the 1920s or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's just something silly. It seems arbitrary and just silly.
Yeah. There's a lot of weird things throughout history of people like liking ankles and all this other stuff. Weird things are taboo.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
that's another interesting little world building thing.
ankles can be cute, but I don't
Yeah.
necessarily know if they should be taboo.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure the safe hand stuff is from Voron teachings.
Voron teachings, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which why Yasna is continuing to do it. I think Shallan points that out too. She's like, "This is interesting."
Yeah. I mean, I guess she doesn't. She still has to keep up some appearances for being a princess.
Bleh. Bleh.
All that social convention.
Yeah. So we can move on to anything reasonable. And this is the aftermath of the stone being destroyed. Um, we get more like it's not a flashback, but we learn more about Yasna, or not Yasna, Shallan.
Mm.
So she goes into uh, the Palladium, which is the largest collection of tomes. It has the largest. It's a big library. It has the largest
Yeah.
collection of tomes. More than it's mentioned, more than the Holy Enclave in Valeth, whatever that is.
Yeah. Name drop.
Sure, okay,
Yeah, it's basically the Library of Alexandria.
yeah. It kind of reminds me of um, Song of Ice and Fire. What's what's the place that the Maesters
Yeah.
are
I
from?
forget the name of it. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that place. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, we talked about her dad's success in politics. Uh, let's see.
Yeah.
The oh, when Shallan gets to the library, she's like, "I want to go in," and the librarian's like, "Well, to go in here, the admission is 1,000 sapphire bromes," and she's like, "Well, that's actually more than I have."
Yeah.
So she just goes to an alcove.
Yeah. And we get uh a really good description of one of the main things about Shallan is she's an artist. As you said before, she can kind of take a memory of something, um, and then like draw it perfectly.
Yeah, absolutely perfectly.
Yeah, kind of reminds me of. Have you ever seen the video of the dude that like went up in a helicopter of Rome and then went down and drew the entire thing?
No,
It's really cool if you haven't seen it.
you have to send it to me later.
Yeah,
That sounds good. It's like perfect pitch for sight.
yeah.
That
So that
sounds crazy.
yeah, it's one of the things I really like about Shallan because I have a hard time drawing a straight line, but like so like getting into like an artist's head and like seeing how they perceive the world is really fun. That's one of the reasons I really like Shallan.
Yeah, you know who's actually really good with art?
Hmm.
Jules. she'll be our little artist, and I don't have any artwork near me that she's done, but she'll draw cats,
Hmm,
and it's an awesome picture of a cat. Like
there you go.
it's like a cat that's sitting,
Yeah,
sitting up, not loafing, but just it's crazy.
yeah.
It's crazy good with it.
Like I wish I could do it, but I just don't have that talent.
How often have you practiced it?
Nah, enough to know I can't do it.
It's
Nah, no.
practice an hour for a whole year and see how much better you get.
I have better things to do.
I bet you could learn how to do it then.
Yeah, probably. But
We do get a really cool thing here is we get a memory of Shallan holding a long silvery sword sharp enough to cut stones as if they were water. This is she's talking about her why she had to leave. Like her dad died. I
yeah,
think in this and in the next chapter she mentions something as well, I think. Um oh no, there's something else. There's a big foreshadowing in the next chapter for
yeah,
her. I'll let anybody that's reading try to figure that out for themselves. We won't touch on
yeah,
that.
yeah,
But yeah, her brother was also so she had a memory of holding a long silvery sword, and her brother was all bruised and battered as well.
mm,
It mentioned in there. Um, and this is around the time like she's doing all these sketches. So she sketches the city of Carbranth.
yeah,
She does a drawing of Yalb and the porter together, and then another one of Yasna,
yeah,
and writes a letter to Yasna stating that should uh, she should be accepted as a ward, even though her education lacks some things, because she struggled hard for what she does know. So, like, hey, look, I know I'm lacking stuff, but everything I do know, I worked hard to learn, and that's who I am, and that's how I'll be.
yeah,
So I'm a hard worker. I'm not just lazy and happen to know things.
yeah,
I'm I have that go-getter attitude.
yeah. She's not just another noble woman that's like had tutors and the best education. And she's still lacking. She's like, no, I tried, but this I only had what I had because I was locked in my room for most of my life.
Yeah, and while she's doing that, she's visited. So she's doing this in Yasna's alcove, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. So she asked where Yasna's alcove was, and Yasna wasn't in there at the time. So she goes sits in there, and she's doing all these drawings, writes this letter, and she's about to leave when Cabsel, who is ardent, a young ardent, um, shows up and was hoping to meet with Yasna, and instead just has a conversation with Shallan
yeah,
and asks her. Uh, she asks her if she'll do something and for him, and she says anything reasonable. Just the name of the chapter. So far, I think every chapter, the title of the chapter has been mentioned in the chapter.
yeah,
So every time that happens, I'm like, hey, he said the thing. He said the thing. Um,
yeah,
let's see.
yeah. So, yeah, and the Ardents are basically the priests of the Vorin religion. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, so here is where I made the note about the palindrome. So they do drop another name for the Almighty, which is Elethanethil, which translates to He who transforms.
Mm.
So this is a case where I said it still follows that it's a palindrome if you take the TH and treat it as not an English TH, but a single rune,
Mm.
like is a letter, then
Alright, yeah.
it 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 works. So like Kalik and Shalash, um, Shalash. If you take sh and make it one rune instead of two letters, then it starts and ends with that rune, and ALA is in the middle and is a palindrome.
Alright, yeah.
So, and I think I mean I can't remember if he's explained in any of the other books, but yeah, I could see that being the thought.
Yeah, I can see that too.
So then we move on to her last POV chapter, where she walks out. Um,
Yeah, basically Yasna comes into the alcove and is like, I heard you were here. Why are you here?
yeah, but at this time, so she had written the letter, but I think Cabsel had set books down on top of it,
Yeah.
so it was hidden. Um, and so does she leave? Let's see. Oh no, no. So she reads it before Shalon leaves and
Yeah.
compliments her on guessing right, like about like, hey, you were right to do a written plea to me. I
Yeah.
like that. However, you're not. I'm not. I'm
You're
not
not
going
gonna
to.
take your word. Yeah. So then basically Shalon's like, alright, she's got like, she's gonna leave in a bit. What if I just cram all the knowledge I'm missing and like petition her when she's leaving and maybe that will work. So she goes out to buy a bunch of books, which is fun.
Yeah, she uses Yao to help her with that. Like she asks
Yeah.
Yao where a book thing is, a bookstore is, and he says, "Hey, go to this one." And she goes, and they do. She doesn't know that she's part of a con yet, but she's buying about to buy books, and she's about to pay more than she really wanted to.
Yeah.
And then Yao busts in and was like, "Hey, what are you doing trying to rip her off? Like I talked to so and so down the way, and he was gonna sell it for this."
Yeah.
And she like almost blew it, but then she's like, "Oh wait,
Yeah,
okay."
it's another fun thing to show like how she's kind of naive because like she doesn't really know the value of money and stuff like that, and then she has this kind of like more streetwise man kind of like help her out so she doesn't get taken advantage of. He's also like cheating and gambling with the guards and stuff like that. So he's a fun little character.
Yeah,
Like little
he's super
side
funny,
character.
and he has the coolest eyebrows. Like he spikes them in a radiant pattern
Mm.
because they describe a lot of it's almost like the guy riding that troll. But a lot of the other Thalens they did describe their eyebrows, they fold them behind their ear because they're just like long, like Pai Mei, almost like a Fu Manchu, but for your eyebrows.
Yeah,
It also kind of reminds me of
loyal.
uh huh?
So it reminds me of loyal from
Yes,
Wheel of Time.
yes. Yeah. Loyal. And I was trying to remember their race. The
The Ogier.
yeah, the Ogier. And a lot of times they'll braid their eyebrows.
Yeah, I wonder if that's another little like Easter egg from Wheel of Time. Where he's like, yeah,
Maybe. So like Nearer the Flame actually is the title of the chapter. And so she was like when she was in the bookstore, the guy was telling her, is like, maybe you want romance novels. She's like, romance novels? Yeah, okay. She got like really snarky with him.
Yeah, she's like, I'm a scholar. I need these. And he's like, oh, okay. We're going to business.
So then after she gets the book, she goes back to the conclave,
Yeah,
gets her own spot, which is near Yasna's, and
yeah,
she's reading and reading and reading, and then Yasna comes over and is impressed with her persistence and that she seeks scholarship on her free time and then agrees to take her as ward.
yep.
She does give the she gives her drawing of her, right?
I think so.
Yeah. And she also gives Yaub the drawing of him and the porter, and um
Yeah,
then takes a memory of him standing there again so she could redraw him later.
yeah. And it's funny that because Yasna like does not care about arts or anything. She's so like analytical. She's like, okay, you're a good artist. I don't care. It's kind of funny.
She's like the best artist in the fucking world.
Yeah, self-taught and all that stuff. But she's like, yeah, that's cute. All right, well, let's get to scholarly work. It's just funny. It's just I really like Yasna. She's a cool character.
Yeah, I like her too.
And,
Any more thoughts on Yasna? Anything I missed on either Yasna or Kaladin before we move on to the interludes?
no, think there is. I think it is a good introduction to the world and both these kind of two main characters, even though Shallan's less of a main character in this novel. Good setup for the world. I don't know. It's fun. I enjoy this section.
I do
Not a,
too. Oh,
not
one
a
thing.
terrible amount of plot happens, but it's a fun chapter section.
I mean, there's enough for us to talk for 2 hours and 10 minutes so far. So,
True, true.
um, one thing I didn't mention before, and we don't have to go deep into it, but mainly because I don't know the reasonings. But at the beginning of each chapter, like the epigraph and the symbol in the chapter, um, there's an arch, and like supposedly the eyes that are at the bottom are like the eyes of the Almighty.
Mm,
And then on each side or above the eyes, there's a spot for two faces. And they're usually mirrored from one side to the other. So there's only ever two, right? At most two different ones, but a lot of times
yeah,
they're all the same. But those are faces of the heralds. I don't know the significance of why they're there.
yeah,
Perhaps they're there for identifying influence of a certain herald or radiant group,
yeah.
um, or
For
themes
yeah,
for those.
mm,
So
yeah. I don't know. I guess I mean it would help if we even knew the names of the heralds and what they actually were. But maybe if it's for like a reread or something.
yeah, probably for a reread.
Even though I've reread it and I still don't understand it. So
Yeah,
it's cool looking though.
they are cool.
I always look. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And I kind of just go ahead. It's not really like Wheel of Time, where in Wheel of Time the little pictures symbolized who the chapter was going to be about, which was fun once you kind of learn that.
Yeah,
These I don't think have like a rhyme or reason. They just kind of look cool.
yeah, they don't seem. I haven't been able to sometimes, but
Yeah.
there was one of my last read through. I was trying to figure it out and was reading stuff online. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then the last thing before the interludes, in this section, the epigraphs are all like, we don't know who's collecting this right now, but obviously somebody is writing down people's last words as they're dying.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if there's an overarching. Some of them are about like mentioning Stormfather, the Almighty, uh, the heralds.
Yeah. It seems like maybe a prophecy. It kind of reminds me of and you should not watch this if you have a faint of heart. It kind of reminds me of the plot of Martyrs, where it's like they're getting the dying breath
Oh yeah.
of these people, and like maybe they're seeing like from beyond, like through the veil of death, like what's gonna happen or something. Which that's a really messed up movie, so watch out if you go try to watch it.
Yeah.
And if you
If
do
you
try to watch it, watch the French version, not the American remake.
No, not the American remake. The French version. I don't even think I watched the American remake, but the
I
French
heard it was terrible.
the French version is good, but if you only if you like horror, or there's aspects of torture porn.
Yeah, it's rough. It's a rough movie.
It's a very rough movie, but it's interesting. It's got some twists. Um, and if you like horror movies, go watch that.
Yeah, it definitely reminded me of Martyrs for these things.
Yeah. So I'll study those later, and maybe it's cool. Um,
Yeah,
but I mean, they're all different people, and it they note down like who the subject is. So it's like one's a cut purse with a wasting sickness. They're all of different. A lot of them are from different places. A baker's apprentice.
yeah,
Let's see,
yeah. I think
ardent.
they're mainly there to like tease you into being like, ooh, something grander is afoot. And
Right.
it's because like if we didn't have like the prelude or like the first or like mainly the prelude, it would be like this. You would think maybe the story is kind of small scale, with like it's like, oh, it's about a slave and about this like noble lady, and like maybe this is cool. This is I feel like these are like, yeah, there's some spice happening, there's some weird stuff in this world, so kind of keep reading.
Yeah. The epigraphs. So all of these are collected in the span of within 2 years. Um, I love that it tells you what day of week of what month. I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
that means nothing to me. Like I don't know in relation to like
yeah,
how long between each of these, except for the year, because the first one is in 1171, and then the last one was 1173, and they go from 1171, 1172, 1173.
yeah.
So
I guess the one big thing we haven't talked about world building wise is the Parshmen. Um,
okay, yeah, go ahead.
they're an interesting thing. They're basically like another race of people that are, they say they're like very docile and kind of um they're basically used as like servants or slaves by basically everybody else in this world. And they seem to have some sort of connection with the Parshendi, which we haven't really had too much contact except for the prelude.
They physically resemble them, but
Yeah, that's
less
mostly.
harsh
Yeah,
exterior.
yeah. And it's just they're interesting. They're always in the background, especially like in the Shallan stuff of like, oh, I had a parshman, like get me something or something like that.
It
And
did mention that it was either they're not allowed in the army or they're not allowed on the bridge crews,
yeah, I think
something like that.
they're too like expensive to be on the bridge cruise because like they're like the perfect servant or whatever.
But also, there's a fear of them uh,
Yeah, maybe joining their
joining the
brethren.
Parshendi
Yeah,
if they get out there. There's something along those lines. So
yeah, and it's just like we don't have to get into it too much, but they're just there and they're
it's another mystery that's going to be
yeah,
fun to watch unfold.
yeah, yep,
All right, so we'll move on to the interludes. Now, these are these are fun. Some of them are connected to things that we've already seen. But a lot of times they are taking place in completely different place on the world with
Yeah.
completely different characters, and it's just jarring. Like, why the hell am I here?
Yeah.
How does this connect to anything? So the first one is,
For the most part, you could cut them out and still have the story, but they're fun.
yeah, they are fun. They come up later. Some of them are even responsible for the creation of the novellas.
Okay. I haven't
So
read any of those.
the two
I read
novellas are the Edge Dancer and Dawn Shard.
I read it. I think I read all of Edge Dancer.
Yeah, that's the one I've read. It's fun.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to get back to those. So interlude one is point of view of a fisherman named Ishik. He lives in the village of Fu Abra, and that's in Pure Lake. And like essentially all the housing there in the village, it's like built in the lake, but the area where it's built is very shallow.
Yeah, the Pure Lake is less than a foot
It's
deep.
almost like a rice field.
Yeah.
And so he's a fisherman, and this particular day he wasn't that successful. On the way back in, he passes Thaspik, who's a clothes washer, and they have a conversation. He gets back to the house, like so. There's a question of foreigners looking for him, and so he goes back to Mayib's house, who's a cook. She likes Ishik because she wants to marry him and tie him down, etc., etc. So he goes and visits her, um, and gives her a fish. So like she gives him food, and he doesn't want to be indebted to her. So he's like, "Here's this fish that it cures aching joints." And she's like, "Oh, dang it! Now I'm not. Now you're not indebted to me anymore." Um, there's
Yeah.
three foreigners in there. The names they give are Val, Timu, and Romer.
Yeah.
They're looking for Hoyd. We learn at the end of the of this chapter they're looking for Hoyd, but when they first describe him, it's a man with white hair, a clever tongue, and an arrow-like face. And um, they also believe like there's gods like New Rollick, and then his brother, whatever the name was, but who's
Yeah.
not actually a god or something.
Vun Mak. Vun Mak is, yeah. So
Yeah,
like it's funny. So like they believe in him, but like they don't want to say his name because it's like sacred, so they say the brother's name instead. Brother
yeah.
god. So
And you have to make one, you have to say things about one to make them believe that
yeah.
you really like them, but they know the other one is really
Yeah.
the god or whatever.
Yeah. It's funny.
So yeah, this is fun, and like this is what Gary says, like these interludes are for those that are more Cosmere aware.
Yeah.
Um, because at first you're like, oh, the foreigner, like from a different place. But some of the let's see,
Do you know who these people are?
who do I?
Yeah, do you? You don't have to say who they are. I'm just curious.
Um no.
Okay.
I have a thought, but I don't have any reason why those specific things, because they're what I do know is that they are world hoppers. They're not Rosharan, even though they appear, and that's what I was about to say here. So two were dark-skinned Makabaki, though they were the strangest Makabaki he'd ever seen. One was thick-limbed, where most of his kind were small and fine-boned, and he had a completely bald head. The other was taller, with short, dark hair, lean muscles, and broad shoulders. In his head, Ishik called them Grump and Blunt on account of their personalities. The third man had light tan skin like an Alethi, He didn't seem quite right either, though. The eyes were the wrong shape, and his accent was certainly not Alethi. He spoke the Sile language worse than the other two, and usually stayed quiet. He seemed thoughtful, though. Ishik called him thinker. So they're masquerading
Yeah.
as um certain races or just people from certain places on Roshar, but he's like, they don't quite look right.
Yeah. I assume one of them is the person that's writing the part 2 epigraph, but I don't know.
I don't know. I don't remember what any of the epigraphs in part two are, which are different. So part two
Yeah.
has different epigraph. It's no longer the dying words of people.
Yeah.
But there are multiple groups of people, like secret societies
Yeah.
that have world hoppers. So I don't know which one this would be.
Yeah.
But yeah, they are definitely looking for Hoyd.
Yeah.
Which we will meet in the next part.
Yeah. And I don't really know what Hoyt is, so I don't know. We can discuss him later, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's like a god or a self-insert brain center. I don't really know what he is. I have ideas, but I don't.
I don't think anybody really knows.
Yeah. Okay, well that's good. You know that he hasn't been.
We've been finding out more and more information. Um so he actually does narrate Tress of the Emerald Sea.
Hmm.
Yeah, that story's narrated by Hoyd.
Yeah, cool.
Just fun. He's a fun storyteller. He likes stories. He likes
Yeah.
stories.
Yeah.
So that's fun, kind of a fun little thing to kind of go, hey, there's something even more.
Yeah.
Like the prelude was like, hey, this story isn't just about a bridge runner and a scholar.
Yeah.
It's about gods and things in this. And then this is like, hey, this isn't just about one world. This is a cosmere. So
Yeah. Also, the Pure Lake sounds insane. It's just like trudging around this giant lake. Like, we wouldn't want to do that.
no. And like they all have rafts, so they can either walk through it or they can just like float on a little raft.
Yeah. Not me.
No. All right. Interlude 2. This is the point of view of Non Balat. I just hit my hand on my desk. Non Balat is Shallan's brother. Non is a title of the oldest living sibling of a family.
I think so.
Yeah. Because she mentions it was let's see, Hellerin was a brother, right? So he's dead.
Yeah, they have a dead brother.
And I think it was non-Hellerin, and then Hellerin died, and now it's Balat, who's the next brother, and he's non-Balat. And then the other two are Asha Jushu and Tet Wickham.
Yeah.
So these are her brothers. Balat is plucking limbs off a crab. This reminds me of Tyrion Lannister, or not Tyrion, but their other the handicap Lannister that was smashing ants, was it? I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
It is just like a brief story, but
Yeah, this is a whole lot of nothing. It's like I wish he would have done something else. Because it's just like, here are her brothers. He's kind of insane.
yeah.
Goodbye. Goodbye.
We do get cell phones. We get phones. Span reads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not in this chapter though.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess you get mentions of it.
Yeah, he mentioned that he So Shallan has contacted him via Spanreed already,
Mm,
telling him that she's been accepted as ward.
yeah.
It lends ugh, it ends on a cliffhanger that
Yeah.
the Davar family is having a big problem. There's a big problem.
Yeah. But also
So
spoiler, these guys don't come back in this book, so it's just a very weird thing.
they don't.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a very weird thing. I don't really know why this chapter exists. It's just fine, but it's funny. I guess it's just like Shallan's family's doing stuff.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
All right. So then we'll just move on to interlude 3, the glory of ignorance. Point of view of Seth. He has a new master named
You mean
Tuk.
Seth, son Valana.
Seth, son, son,
Truthless of
Valana.
Shinovar.
True.
You gotta do his entire title.
Yeah. So Tuk they're in a tavern in Bavland, which if you look at the map, you can see. I was looking where Bavland is. That's not the right map. Oh, by the way, my copy is legit
Ooh.
signed
There you go.
by Brandon Sanderson. I sent you a photo the other day. I met him at a book signing event in
Yeah.
New Orleans. So Bovland, I just looked at this so you can know how far he moved from uh where he was. I mean, it's been 6 years,
Yeah.
but all right. So I'm guessing he in Kolinar is where he killed um
Yeah.
the king. And so like uh all right, for people watching, for people listening, sorry. So Bovland is right here in the south of Yakaved, and
Oh yeah,
Kolinar
it is.
Kolinar is up here.
Yeah. So it's good.
So he's in a completely different place. They're in a tavern. Tuk is showing him off and telling tales to the other miners.
Yeah.
Which dude talks way too much and makes himself a target, and so he's killed when he's leaving the tavern. And they find a stone on his person, and Seth is like, uh, I'm bound by the thing in your hand to tell you that that's my oath stone, and whoever holds it commands me.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, okay, well,
Yeah.
now you're mine.
Yeah.
Um, which really, so we get a lot more about Seth here, that we get to see his emotions and his intelligence in this
Yeah.
chapter, but it's it's sad because he's just a tool. He Because of the oath stone and because of being truthless, he is just a tool, and his emotions and intelligence are just, you know, um
Yeah. It's a weird thing.
yeah, he's basically dehumanized.
Oh yeah, definitely. So yeah, I still wonder if the Oath Stone is like actually magically binding him. I would guess so, since he has such a one he doesn't want to kill. Like so like seems like his morality he could like if it wasn't magically binding he could just not do the things he does.
Yeah.
But maybe that's what truthless means. I don't know. I don't know what
Yeah, I don't know what truthless means either.
yeah. I guess we'll find out.
Uh, so one thing I wanted to point out here, and it goes back to the prologue here. So I highlighted it in the book. The miners eventually tired of Tuk's increasingly slurred stories. They bid him farewell, ignoring his broad hints that another cup of beer would prompt him to tell his greatest tale, that of the time when he'd seen the Night Watcher herself. So we get who's this Night Watcher,
Mm.
and stolen a sphere that glowed black at night. That tale always discomforted Seth, as it reminded him of the strange black sphere Gavilar had given him. He'd hidden that carefully in Yaakoved. He didn't know what it was, but he didn't want to risk a master taking it from him.
Yeah.
So it comes back to that mystery.
Where,
So
yeah,
obviously
the mystery
Sanderson wants
black
us
sphere.
to
Yeah.
Sanderson wants us to think about that black sphere.
Curious what it does. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know
I
either.
wonder if it's like a different type of soul caster or something.
I don't know. I mean, maybe a different type of gemstone
Yeah.
that's not powered by Stormlight.
Maybe. Yeah. Anti-stormlight.
Yeah. So, because we know there's or do we? I do. Hmm. I'm not going to mention that then
Right. Yeah.
because I'm not sure. So,
Yeah. So
awesome.
yeah. So
Anything?
part two, we're gonna get some new character POVs. We're gonna get Dalinar and Adolin, and we're also gonna get our boy Kaladin. So
Yeah,
it's gonna be fun.
we're gonna miss Shalon for this one,
Yeah.
but we got
I guess
Dalinar
we
is
already we've met him before in the prologue. He's the dead king's brother.
yes, and we have no idea who Adolin is yet.
Yep. And
But
we still got Kaladin. So
spoiler, not spoiler, Adolin is cool.
I like Adolin too.
Yeah.
I like Dalinar as well.
Part two, I like them all. Part two is called the Illuminating Storms. So, um, next week we will cover that in its entirety. And yeah, it'll be exciting. I'm really enjoying this read through. It's a lot faster reading this than I
Yeah.
remember it before.
Yeah, once you kind of internalize the world building, you kind of just run through it because you're not like, "Ooh, what is that?" And you're like, "Oh, that," and you just kind of go through it.
Yeah, hopefully Chris is able to get through it with us this time. I think he said he's tried reading it a few times in the past and just
Yeah,
stopped
I mean,
halfway through.
I could see it because this book is really slow. It's a really good, but it is very slow.
It
It's
is.
like it's basically like 75% world building and characters and like 25% plot and setup for like the rest of the books.
Yeah, and a lot of like leading on of a
Yeah,
mystery, like when is this going to be solved? When is this going to be solved?
yeah.
Oh, oh, oh.
Oh, ho,
Um,
ho. And like you don't really get the connections between like the Shallan plot and the Kaladin plot and the Dalinar plot. Like they're all kind of separated right now through this
yeah,
book.
which is
So
not nice. I mean,
yeah, I don't mind it.
if it, and then that goes back to like the the prelude, like the importance of the prelude, because if the prelude didn't exist and it just started with the prologue, and then it introduced Kaladin and
Yeah,
Shallan and then Dalinar, and like most of them aren't connected, you'd be like, why the hell am I reading about these people in these
yeah,
different places and there's no overlap yet?
yeah. The prelude kind of reminds me of the prologue of Eye of the World, where it's like, all right, shit in the past was crazy, and guess what? Probably that's it's coming back. We're getting some weird stuff in the past. It's probably gonna be relevant to the characters that you're gonna do. Instead, you just get like, I'm Rand, I'm a farmer, or I'm Kaladin, I'm a slave. It's like, no, there's stuff going on.
Yeah.
Just fun. Yeah,
All right.
I like the fantasy world building stuff is really fun, but it can get a little frustrating if like the plot doesn't happen. But I think the plot moves around enough to where like you're not just bogged down in the world building.
Yeah, there's some authors that like they do a lot of world building and just too much where it's like, okay, I'm getting bogged down with learning about the world and not having enough plot.
Mm.
Sanderson gives you enough plot.
Yeah.
For me anyway.
Yeah, same here.
There are some authors that are completely opposite, where they don't do the world building, but they have all these in-world things that don't translate to Earth. And you're like, what the heck is that? I don't understand that. Like,
Yeah.
please explain that to me. I'm lost.
Yeah, yeah.
I've read the first book in the Malazan Book of the Fallen series, and that's one that you're just like, I don't understand.
Mm.
Um,
I've thought about starting those.
I want to read them. Maybe we'll read those later for
Maybe. It's like that's like the last I think like super huge like fantasy thing I've never really read any of.
maybe we should do it on here. That way we're both forced to continue.
Yeah.
Because I heard like some people are just like, just fizzle out.
Yeah. I don't even is it done?
I think so. There's 10 books in it, I think.
Yeah.
The first one's Garden of the Moons.
Mm.
It's very dark, by the way.
Oh really? Alright.
Yeah, I've read Garden of the Moons. Um, so all right. So hey, thanks for time this week, Justin. Um, and
Yeah.
next week we're gonna tackle part 2. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, share, all those things. Visit our sponsor, Mudcat Whiskers at mudcatwhiskers.com. Please use code paperweights at checkout to save you some dough. Um, what you save on your beard care products, you can probably buy more books and follow along.
There you
So,
go. Yeah.
all right, we'll see y'all next week.
Bye.